Hi, this is Dylan from Teach English Spain, and this is another episode in the podcast about teaching English in this fantastic country. So in this episode, I'd like to talk about a number of reasons why teaching English in Spain might be a good idea for you. Now, if you've never considered living and working in Spain, maybe you should. The Spanish tourist industry uses the slogan, "Spain is different," and this is certainly true. It's a country with amazing natural resources and a wide range of vibrant and culturally rich regions to suit all tastes. So, if you can imagine yourself sipping a cocktail on a beach, wandering through a green valley, visiting some of the world's most architecturally impressive monuments, or simply sitting in a plaza, drinking a coffee and watching the world go by. Listen and find how you can live your dream in Spain and find a rewarding job to fund your stay. By learning how to teach English as a foreign language, you can find work in Spain or actually anywhere else in the world where people want to speak better English. And of course you can make a difference while doing so. You're actually helping these people maybe achieve their goals in life, their objectives, improve their economic situation, and also, of course, experience different cultures. Now, in order to teach English, what really helps is if you obtain a TEFL, TESOL certificate, especially accredited ones like the Cert TESOL from Trinity. And these 4-week courses teach you the basics of teaching English as a foreign language or as a second language, and how to create effective and dynamic lessons for your students. And if you do think that living in Spain might be right for you, then it's a good idea to take this course in Spain. So you'll get a feel for the culture, the language, the people, the environment and everything like that. So let's be more specific now. I'm going to talk about 10 reasons why I think teaching English in Spain might be for you. So the first reason, of course, is if you come to Spain, you can learn or brush up on Spanish, which is one of the world's most popular languages. So it's actually spoken as a first language by more people than English, which people don't necessarily realise. It's spoken, of course, in Spain, all over Latin America, a couple of countries in Africa, I believe, and it's also known in lots of other countries. And of course, if you do your TEFL training in Spain and teach English in Spain, you'll be immersed in a Spanish-speaking environment. And it's also a relatively easy language to learn. At least it's relatively easy to learn the basics. Many words in Spanish are very similar to words in English. They're called cognates. For example, intelligent would be inteligente in Spanish. Culture is cultura. So it's not too different, so you can grasp the basics relatively quickly. To speak Spanish really well is actually quite difficult because the verb tenses and everything like that, the grammar is fairly complex for English speakers. But having said that, you can learn to communicate relatively confidently and fluently within a short space of time. Now also you can experience a really vibrant, exciting culture. If you want to teach Spanish people, it really helps if you get to know about their cultural values, their interests, their beliefs, everything like that. What they think, what they feel, and what they do in their daily lives. And Spain culturally is obviously very rich. It's kind of a blend of, you've got lots of European influences and also Arabic influences. It was obviously a great imperial power, so if you go to Spain and then you go to Latin America later, you'll find there are a lot of similarities there. But it's also a modern democracy. It's a vibrant culture, a very creative culture in many ways. Many famous artists, writers, filmmakers come from Spain. And so if that's something that interests you, then I think you'll have a great time living here. Now, of course, another reason why teaching English in Spain might be a good idea for you, is just it's a boom industry here in Spain. There aren't that many jobs in Spain. Spain is slowly, perhaps, easing its way out of an economic depression, a crisis. But English language academies, and indeed language academies in general, are everywhere here in Spain. And the Spanish, a bit like the Brits, are perhaps unfairly regarded as being poor at learning languages. It's perhaps more accurate to say that Spanish, like Brits, historically were not particularly motivated to learn English or another language, possibly because it's such an international language. But things have changed, and Spaniards are enrolling in language courses in droves. So parents are making sure their kids get extra English lessons. Students, in order to receive their degree certificates, often need to have evidence of proficiency in a second language, and they often choose English. And of course, most Spanish people, or lots of Spanish companies, require their employees to have a basic level of English. So you'll find Spanish language academies, especially English language academies, are everywhere, and people have to learn English. Okay, it really helps them find work and improve their economic and cultural position. So as I said, Spanish people really need to learn English. Another reason why Spanish need to learn English is that so many of them are looking for work abroad, either in the UK, although the Brexit situation has complicated that, Germany, other parts of Europe, Northern Europe, Scandinavian countries, they're going to the States, to Brazil, further afield, and English is often the lingua franca. It's the language that people use in other countries. So if you, for example, work in China and you're a Turkish person working with a Brazilian person and a Spanish person and a British person, an American person in an intercultural team, you probably end up communicating in English. So it really helps if you're working in this global economy to speak English. And as I said, university students are increasingly required to demonstrate they have proficiency in a second language before they can graduate. Now, apart from the economic reasons of learning English, and the economic reasons of teaching English here, I think by teaching English you do make a real difference to people's lives. Teaching English as a foreign or as a second language can produce tangible results. And as your learners grow in confidence and their ability when speaking English, you'll feel you're making a valuable contribution. You're making a difference in people's lives. My learners, for example, have gone on to find work. They've gone on to work in other countries. They've gone on to study abroad. And they've done this because they were able to demonstrate that they had a relatively good level of English. And they passed exams, which opened doors for them. So, as I said, speaking better English can lead to an increase in the quality of life for many people here. And that's a great thing. It's a great feeling to know you're making a difference in people's lives. Now, if you want to live abroad, Spain is different to, for example, the UK, the States, Northern European countries. It's different, but it's not too different. I've lived in a couple of other countries, and the culture shock I've experienced in Spain wasn't quite as dramatic as, for example, when I lived in Latin America and Ecuador. Spain is a modern European country in many respects, and if you are from the UK, you can feel quite comfortable here. A lot of people speak English, there are lots of expats here, so if you feel the need to speak English, you're never too far from an Irish pub and you can go in there and make some English-speaking friends. Shops here are fairly modern, the internet's good. You know, it's a modern European country, and things work relatively well here. I mean, we do complain, as expats we complain a lot here about the bureaucracy, about certain things here in Spain, but actually I would say it's comparable to living in the UK in many ways. And if you are from Europe, flights here are cheap, so if you feel the need to go back home for a weekend, it's generally very easy and relatively cheap to do so. And also the cost of living here, especially if you live away from Madrid or Barcelona, is not too high really compared to other European countries. It's not as cheap as it used to be, and consumer goods can be comparable or the same price as they might be back home. But the simple pleasures in life, a coffee, a beer. Here in Granada we have free tapas, so you buy a beer and you get free tapas, and sometimes they're quite substantial. Are affordable. Rent is relatively low, as I said, outside of the big cities, and generally life here isn't too expensive. in somewhere like Granada, you could probably have a fairly comfortable life, maybe with €1,000 a month, if you are sharing a flat with certain people and you're not living in maybe the most expensive parts of town. And transport's fairly cheap here, and intercity transport is also relatively cheap. So trains and buses in particular, are fairly good, reliable. And so if you, for example, if you come to Granada and you want to take a day trip to somewhere like Malaga or Seville, it's doable and relatively cheap. Now, nightlife here is pretty amazing, and there are lots of parties. So that's one of the things which people obviously know about Spain. That it's a culture which enjoys being outside, celebrating. You're never far from a fiesta or from a festival here in Spain. And as a Brit, I'm astounded by how many local and national holidays there are. And one thing which certainly as a Brit might surprise you about it, living here in Spain, is that you have lots of local holidays. So for example, Granada might shut down for the day, but if you work in Madrid, you'll have to keep on working. So, and even in small towns will have their local holidays. That does get a bit confusing sometimes. If you actually live in one town and work in another. But it makes for an enjoyable life here, because you're never far from a holiday. And they also have this thing called the puente, which means bridge in Spanish. So if a holiday falls on a Thursday, you'll often have the Friday off as well to make it into a long weekend. Or if you've got a holiday on a Tuesday, then the Monday will also be a holiday. So again, it's very common to have long weekends here in Spain. As an English teacher as well, it's changing slightly, but traditionally most Spanish students or most Spanish learners of English didn't really study very often on Friday, so it's quite common still to have 4-day weeks, Monday to Thursday. You don't get too many classes on a Friday afternoon or a Friday evening here. Now, of course, if you're from a climate like the UK where we don't get too much sun, then coming here to Spain is pretty incredible, because the weather here is generally pretty good. Now, the summers can be very hot and very long, which is why lots of English teachers actually go back home for the summer. There also aren't too many jobs, or a lot of academies close for the summer, or at least they close in August. So you might decide to escape Spain for the hottest part of the summer. But in general, the weather here is pretty good. It does depend. If you're in the north of Spain, then it does rain a lot up there. But the summers are warm, and I think what you really notice living in most parts of Spain is just the amount of sunshine. So it just makes a difference. You do feel good here, just walking out and the sun shining and the skies are blue. And even if it's cold, then you just wrap up, and it makes a difference, I think, to your emotional well-being, just being out on the street so much. And that means that if you're into sports, or you like walking, running or cycling, it's a wonderful place to live. And finally, just living abroad, whether it's in Spain, Russia, China, wherever, it's a wonderful opportunity to enrich your life and to just experience something different. It can be challenging, it can be stressful, but it's really boring. And it just gives you the opportunity, I think, to learn new skills and develop on a personal level. And that goes with teaching English. It's not easy. There'll be challenges there, and you have to learn to be creative, resourceful, and manage your time, manage your classes, manage your emotional well-being. But I think it does help you grow as a person. So even if you only teach English here in Spain for a year or a couple of years, I think it will be an experience you'll never forget. And it will make a difference, I think. You'll gain a confidence in being able to deal with the unexpected, which I think will benefit you throughout the rest of your life. So I hope I've convinced you to at least think about teaching English here in Spain. There are problems, of course, and maybe I'll discuss those in another episode. But I do think the quality of life here for English teachers isn't really bad in many respects. You're probably not going to become extremely rich, but you can have a fairly decent quality of life here and just enjoy life. So as I said, if you are thinking of teaching English here in Spain and you're not qualified, you might want to think about taking our Trinity's TESOL course in Granada. So please get in touch at www.teachenglishspain.com. And if you have any ideas for other episodes, other things you'd like me to talk about in the Teach English in Spain podcast, please let me know. And hasta luego.